Hi everyone, sorry a little bit delayed. I'm going to be talking to Jamie Margolin, which I'm very excited about. Let me just find her on here. There we go.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about
Good.
you? Well,
I'm good.
considered the world.
I know it's like yesterday was a heavy day. I feel continued to be so.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Okay. I guess I say good, but I guess
Yeah,
it's
like
heavy
more ahead.
considering I don't know. I guess my automatic response when someone asks me how you're doing is like, great, I'm good, I'm good. But in reality, it really does feel like the world is weighing. There's just so much darkness everywhere you turn, and when you
Yeah,
process one tragedy, then another happens. And so just
another
when you're
one.
like, okay, like I barely got done processing the fires, and then
Hmm.
RBG died, and I barely got done processing that, and then the verdict for Breonna Taylor came in, and so it's just like one thing after another,
Yeah,
and it's like you never get to fully process the world because then another thing happens, and it's just this
yeah.
constant wave.
It is, and I think no matter how like open it is to sort of feel things and process things, there's always the kind of reality of the day that means you have to kind of go back into it in the same way like when people ask you how you are, it's like you don't even know yet. There isn't even the time to figure out how you feel before like it's time to communicate with people or process things. So
Yeah,
yeah, and I
yeah,
think sometimes not knowing too, like I don't know how I feel about something, or like, especially I think when there's anger involved and confusion, when there's injustice and there's frustration and anger, it's like there's nowhere to like put it before you're hit with the next story.
yeah, exactly. And it's like you still have to get up and do your homework and go through every day.
Hmm.
And so you see the wildfires happening, and then you just have to do your homework, and then
Yeah,
bam,
it's
like the
like,
verdict.
and there's like day-to-day reality of
Yeah.
things. Because were you when you left home, were the fires just like beginning to come, like before you moved to New York?
Yeah, so I guess before I get into it, I realize that I haven't like introduced
Yeah,
myself.
yeah. So
And
we're
we just
like chatting.
started talking and
Yeah,
people
please
are like,
introduce
what's
yourself.
happening?
Yeah.
Um, so hi everyone, my name is Jamie Margolin. I'm an 18-year-old climate justice organizer from Seattle. And I'm also author of a new book called Youth to Power, as well as film and television student at NYU, and plaintiffs suing my government over um, continuing to worsen the climate crisis in Washington state. And I'm here with Bonnie to talk about climate anxiety because I know that a lot of people experience a lot of climate anxiety. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk with you a little bit more about the mental health impacts of the climate crisis and how to deal with the world right now mentally.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I also pinned it so hopefully people can remember what we're talking about.
Oh, I'm
Um,
so sorry. You spelled my name wrong. It's Jamie
oh
Margot.
no. Let me,
I-N, not I-S.
I, wait. Okay.
Margolin. Yeah,
I'd love also to hear
no
about like,
problem.
I guess what brought you into, I guess like what brought you into the focus of sort of climate justice, and was that particularly inspired or pushed by an experience or sort of like maybe where you grew up or just maybe your generation?
I mean, climate justice. Okay, so climate justice specifically for people who don't know, there's a difference between like climate action generally and climate justice. Climate justice is acknowledging the intersections of how the climate crisis is intertwined with other issues. So it's not just like climate change and everything separate. It's like climate change is a result of oppressive systems, and people who feel the worst effects of those systems also feel the worst effects of the climate crisis. So, I guess the way that I really started thinking about the world through a climate justice lens is I really learned by doing. I got involved in climate organizing when I was um, 14. And at that time, I didn't really know about climate justice. I just knew that like the world was on fire, and I was like, okay, I need to take action. But I didn't fully understand climate justice. But as I started getting involved, there were climate justice organizers in the spaces that I was in who were telling me about things, who were making me see things, who were showing me things. And as I worked, I learned as I went along. So by the time, so for the year that I first got involved, by the time I was done with that first year, I kind of had a better scope of the real, like the climate crisis beyond just what people think it is on surface level.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started my organization 0 Hour, by then I had a much bigger understanding. We brought in people who taught even more. So as I've been working, I've just been learning and learning. And it's, you never stop learning. You keep learning every day about how climate change keeps intersecting with all of these other things. So
yeah, and I think, you know, creating an environment or creating an organization and a community like you did with this 0 Hour enables, like you say, more people to come in with their stories of what has brought them into it. And I think that's always really interesting, just obviously on a global level and, you know, on a national level. It must be, as more people join, maybe they bring something to the table that's really affecting their community or them personally. And I think before I found, even though I guess my route in specifically to sort of the climate crisis was specifically like ocean health and plastics, I think you open one door with something and you can't not just begin to be just like continually kind of drawn to all the different things and how they interrelate. I feel like it's impossible to sort of have one focus without being kind of catapulted into realizing the complexity of everything.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear more about your book and what led you to write your book, and I guess what that process was also like, and sort of challenges or excitements that you found within that writing.
Yeah, so I can grab it. I recently wrote a book called Youth to Power, Your Voice and How to Use It, which is a guide to being a young organizer for any cause. Pretty much, when I was first starting to get involved in organizing and activism, I didn't really know what to do or how to it was really just trial and error. And I would keep messing up, and then I would learn again, and I would mess up, and I would learn again. And it was very, very difficult. And then eventually I was like, I got a footing for it. And then after I had kind of established myself in this field, then people were asking me like, how do I get involved? I really want to get involved. I don't know how. And I was like, okay. So I started responding to them individually, like via Instagram message and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then it still wasn't like, I don't know, people kept having more questions, and I was like, okay. And I feel like this still, and it wasn't just online, it was also in panels, different things. How can I get involved? That's the question that always happens. So then I was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna write a book that answers everyone's questions so that they can have like a guide, if you want to get involved as an organizer, as an activist, or just take action on issues that you care about. And so that's how I wrote Youth to Power, and it's out now everywhere. If you want to read the book, you can go to www.youthtopowerbook.com. I'll also type the link in the chat. And it has each chapter talks about a different aspect of organizing and change making, and from event organizing to mobilizing to using social media for a cause to using traditional media for a cause. And then after each chapter, there's an interview with a young organizer from a different cause, so people can get like a general sense of everything, of people from different causes and how they take action. And it has a foreword by Greta Thunberg. Cool. So yeah, that's the book, and I will type in the link for you guys to get it. But you can just say, you can just like go to your bookstore and ask for like Youth to Power, or just go to youthtopowerbook.com.
Put it in. I hope I realized I didn't pin that thing. I pinned it on. I also would love, I think what's interesting about writing a book and looking at helping people to get involved is that I think we can see in social media so much these like powerful sort of leading figures who are not only kind of confidently holding the mic on a stage at a protest or organizing big events. I always think it's really important to stress that there's so many different roles within social change. And I think it's, and important that sometimes people don't want to be the leader. They don't want to be the person in the front facing, yet every role is so important. And to sort of find out, like, I guess, is there any tips or helpful ways that you feel that people can help identify who, like, what role they can take within social change? I often feel like it's important to sort of look at your strengths and maybe.
I mean, really, the way to identify about social change is really. It's not like there's one right or wrong answer to identify like your role in it. It's really just, what is your passion? What is your talent? What is it that you really care about? What is it that you are good at, what is it that everyone knows you for, and then just apply that to the movement that you care about. You know, it's really just about knowing yourself and knowing how you can help. And look, it can be down to something like, you know, people have to be fed at the protest, right? And if you're a really good cook, and like a lot of organizers, myself included, like really neglect food and eating, and like you're so in the moment of organizing that you forget to eat, then if you're a good cook, you can help them, you can cook for them, or you can help like that. So there's just so many ways that you could help.
Yeah, great. And I guess with that, then, to segue into this topic of essentially
talk about climate anxiety.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to segue into. Yeah. And so, yeah, within that, obviously, there's even just the thought of, I think, for everyone to worry about how do I get involved can cause anxiety before you've even maybe began to take action, and therefore get burnout from going to protest, you know, pushing campaigns and feeling like you're not getting any sense of change with things. Like, I think it can be a long road of change. And obviously so many people have been before us who too have felt very burnt out and sort of, I guess, discouraged by things. So is there I mean, first of all, let's just talk about what even climate anxiety is. I think essentially, I mean, would you like to talk about how you would define climate anxiety?
Climate anxiety, or eco grief, or eco anxiety, it has different names. It's pretty much just the overwhelming anxiety, fear, sadness that people feel when they truly grasp the entirety of the climate crisis and truly understand, like it's just the horror and the grief and the sadness that you feel when you see the West Coast burning, when you see your house flooded, when like all these things, bad things are happening, and you feel powerless. It's just like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just really just feeling the environmental crisis and feeling the grief and fear of it, and just constantly having it there and thinking about it. And for me, sometimes it stops me from doing what I need to do in my day, because there's a little voice in my head like, well, what even is the point of doing this? What is the point of getting up each day and doing my homework if everything is going to burn down? Why am I studying for a future that doesn't exist? Why? What am I planning for? Like, you know, you see the countdown clock of, you know, when it's going to be too late to solve the climate crisis. We're down to like 7 years until it's too late. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why am I going to school and studying for a future where I'm just going to be running from wildfires or other catastrophic things? Like, it's often a lot of existentialism.
Yeah.
I feel like that's at least how it manifests for me, and it stops me from doing my day-to-day work and my day-to-day life, because I'm so consumed with like feeling the environmental crisis in my bones and feeling like, oh God, like this is it. Like, I'm planning for a normal life, but I don't think I'm going to actually ever have this. Then I feel like that's really how it manifests for me.
Yeah. And I think there's always that, what I find is difficult is balancing or understanding what is a collective anxiety and a collective sense of kind of sort of foreboding kind of reality of the future, and what also is individual to you. I think is sometimes hard to realize. Sometimes when I can feel super anxious and I realize like I'm not alone in this, so many other people feel this, there is a collective kind of weight to everything that's going on. It kind of, I think, especially when you're trying to take action, and sometimes you just like, you realize maybe the best way to take action for a moment is to just stop and feel better about, just to kind of look after yourself essentially. And I think that's always important. And I'm sure for you, you know, before you know it, you've committed to different things, whether that's kind of showing up to things, speaking at things, writing something. Do you find, how do you sort of cope in moments, or there are tools that you use to rest within that and know when to say no, I guess, sometimes?
I'm sorry, my camera cut out at the last
Oh, okay. I was just saying tools to kind of deal with it. And are there moments where you have to sort of pull back and step back from commitments?
Yeah, I mean, really dealing with it, it's kind of trying to understand that no matter what happens, I have to make the most of each day. You just kind of crawl out of bed and you just, I don't know, you just get out there and you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And I think really for me, you know, it's like sometimes you just don't check the news. You know, you don't have to, you get off Twitter, because Twitter is just a cipher of just bad news constantly. Sometimes you just need to like take a step back from social media, take a step back from all these places, and just kind of understand like, I need, for my own sanity, to not be thinking about this right now, even though we are with, and here's the problem. Sometimes people don't have that privilege. When you are, for example, when your house just got flooded or destroyed by a climate disaster, you can't be like, well, now I'm not going to think about it, because you have to. When you're breathing in smog, when the sky is red, how can you not think about it? And so I feel like when you're unaffected to an extent, you can kind of be like, okay, self-care. But then there's also like, how do you cope when the air that you're breathing is toxic? Like, you can't ignore it. It's very inescapable when you can't breathe.
Yeah. And I think the reality, I think when you've studied to a certain extent, not even that far, the science behind everything and the real statistics and the reality, you know, you have a fire like we had here on the West Coast, and it's so overwhelming because you know it's not going to get better. You know, it's only going to become more frequent, more intense, more. So it feels when you're entering, and I think it's so much, obviously it has still been for my generation, but even more so for yours, you're already literally entering an age that this is the kind of normality, essentially. And I think what I am inspired by yourself and by your peers and generation is that you've really, you know, taken to the streets and you've used your voice and you've said it's not okay, and you've kind of continually called people, systems out. And I think it's amazing to see like the mobilization that you have done. And I think, I'm sure, and I hope that there's like a sense of friendship and community. I like when you do get overwhelmed by Instagram, even though you get to have these relationships like we are having now, I think it's really important for people to really foster like phone calls, texting, like on a more personal level with people with the kind of anxiety of things. Because I think however connected we are, you can get really isolated into your phone, into
social media makes you lonely, I feel like, to an extent. And when you're just reading and scrolling on bad news after bad news, it's very difficult to, like, I don't know, keep your head above water. But look, if I had figured out a way to completely cope and rise above climate anxiety, I wouldn't be suffering from it. So I know that we're having this conversation about, you know, climate anxiety and all of this stuff, but like, I have tips in the ways that I just get on through each day, but like I still feel it. So I can't exactly say like, this is how you don't feel it. And maybe it's not about not feeling it, because it's also like, how can we expect to, I guess, to live in a world that is literally in catastrophic decline and be like, okay, fine, whatever, let's go. Like, I feel like it's only natural, it's only human that we're sad, that we're scared about this. And I feel like if you're experiencing climate anxiety, then you shouldn't be afraid, or not afraid, you shouldn't feel ashamed or feel alone, because that's something that like a lot of people feel. And it's also like, of course you're going to be anxious and sad if the sky's the wrong color, if everything is so dangerous, and if the world is as we know it is ending in a certain way. Like, I hate to be apocalyptic, but like, I mean, the sky was red. How can you not talk about it being red? So
I also think on a wider sense of things, it brings into question our, obviously in our biology to survive, to evolve, to adapt, to sort of cling to life. But I think I personally am always very sort of like drawn to more realities of knowing that like our time, or our time is kind of up, essentially, even though that sounds very like bleak and depressing. I think it's an interesting, like, where do you catch yourself with ego, essentially, and where do you catch yourself with like us needing to survive as a race, knowing that we've created a home that's kind of not inhabitable. And I think it's interesting in the biggest, sometimes that makes me, even though that's quite bleak, it makes me feel almost more calm, knowing that like there's other ages and lives to be had on this planet, essentially, and it doesn't need to just involve us
as in the human race,
or as a species.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's a way to think about it. I mean, there's also like, I think not the ego, but maybe it is an ego thing of like wanting a legacy, wanting to live on, you know, after, like, we read the Greek philosophers thousands of years after they're dead, and it's like, what about the people who make art now? Like, will there even be a society I can't even think of a couple of years from now, let alone thousands,
Yeah.
where people will remember us. And it's like, and our art and what we created. And it almost feels like, you know, I'm creating things, you know, I'm going to film school. I want to, like, you know, have something that people see many years from now to remember, to, you know, I don't know. It's like people don't want to be forgotten, and it's not really like
yeah, I think it's interesting, like you say, the art, that's definitely obviously how we leave an impact that can be reflected on years, thousands of years later. But I think it's interesting too, like, what do we leave, how do we leave the earth, the ground, the animals, the environment, all these ecosystems? Like, I think it's I feel like that seems to be shifting people's, like, I hope, connection to realizing, like, we're like stewards of the earth, and we have to actually leave or make kind of an impact on kind of our environment. And that can be very creative, whether that's kind of watching a plant grow. That can be a legacy in a moment of, like, watching something physically and tangibly kind of grow. And I think what's hard, I often find, when you can be kind of anxious and overwhelmed, is actually having any physicality or physical relationship with the crisis that can exist as a connection to something, even if it's yourself being part of nature. I don't know, it's probably getting a bit existential, but I just think it's an interesting, like, when we're so intertwined in culture and art, like, to, like, what our relationship is, and that can be kind of creative, and to me makes me feel a little calm to kind of just look at the nuances.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's like the psychology of how to deal with the end of the world. It's like there's no right or wrong way to do it, I feel, because it's almost like trying to not justify, but try to prepare ourselves for understanding that. And look, I don't want to be like, oh, we're going down and there's nothing we can do about it. Like, I'm a climate justice organizer because I do believe that we will, that not that we will, but that there's a chance, because otherwise I would just be lying down and being like, oh, like, weird.
Yeah.
But we're not. You've seen movements, because I feel like it's a very, you know, privileged standpoint to just be like, oh, well, let the world burn, because that implies that you aren't in it while it's burning. Saying let's watch the world burn implies that you are watching it and not in it. I feel like we still, when I say coping with climate anxiety and all this existentialism, it's really about up in here. I don't want people to think like we're just like, ah, yes, let it burn. No. We are fighting till the very last day to preserve everything that we can, to save as many people as we can, to stop this climate crisis. Like, we are doing everything we can, and the hope is that we will save people, we will save you know, the world to some extent. Like, that's really what we're trying to do. But it's like, you see the collapse happening, and we're still fighting, and we're going to be fighting it till the last day. But it's just, and I don't know, there's a stubborn part of me that still, like, wants to have hope that we're going to get out of this. Like, I can't fully accept that we won't solve this, because I don't know, that would mean losing everything, and I can't accept that, even though all the science is pointing to that's where we're heading. There's just a little stubborn part of me that's like, no, that can't happen, like, I don't know, it's just it's just a part of, like, I'm a fighter, so every time I'm like, oh god, I can't, like, it's too late, and then the little fighter inside of me is like, I don't even know how we're gonna do this, I just feel like we will. I don't even, like, I don't know, that kind of helps me. It's like, I will wallow in my climate anxiety for, like, I'll go through phases. So when the wildfires happened, I went through, like, a week of extreme climate anxiety. And it's not that I just stopped worrying about the climate crisis after the week had passed, but it's like a disaster will happen. I'll feel the anxiety. I'm all the way in New York. We saw haze here in New York from the West Coast. Our temperatures dropped. Some people are saying because of the, like, the smoke, like, projecting the sun off of it or something. I don't know science, but, you know, something like that. And so, like, I was really, really anxious. And then I was like, oh, like, nothing, there's no point to anything. I might as well just wallow. And then the little fighter in me was like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to keep doing this. Like, so I don't know. That's kind of how I get through it, honestly. It's just, I feel the feelings, but then the little fighter in me is like, all right, get up, do your work.
Yeah. I feel the same. I mean, you have, like, a conversation like this, and you're suddenly like, okay, yeah, there's hope, there's room and space for redesigning systems. I think obviously what has been so much brought into play this year, even more so, are broken systems of whether that's the justice system, whether that's the food system, whether that's health systems. Like, so many things have been very blindingly clear that they're not working for the betterment of people and the planet. And I think in those moments, you can't not see space and possibility to reimagine them, redesign them, to like build things back better since they've been shut down. Like, how wild an experience to essentially have a kind of moment of not resetting, but just like, never would we have imagined suddenly there would be hardly any cars in the streets or planes in the sky when we were suddenly inside. So I think it just shows that like huge shifts can happen, and like how people were mobilized to stay at home. If that same sense of kind of change could happen and be applied to this crisis, which needs to be, I think it just shows that there's like such possibility for drastic change, which brings me hope for sure.
Yeah,
I'd love to talk about I'd love to talk about the fact that you're now studying film, and I think I did the exact same essentially undergrad degree as you are doing, and I think it's really interesting to talk about how you're kind of shifting the method through, or like adding to the method through which you're sort of telling your story. And I'd love to know like what brought you to study film, and are there stories that you're like inspired and excited to start to tell through film?
Yeah, so a lot of people were surprised when I announced I'm going to film school and I want to be a screenwriter and a director. They're like, oh, but I thought you were going to run for office and everything like that. And it's like, you know, I had like, you know, future president in my bio for like a while, but that was more of kind of a joke, and it was more of like, I think people took it literally. And but there was, but to be fair, there was a moment where I was like, I see myself in politics, but it wasn't because I genuinely like loved politics. I love communities, I love taking action, I care for my people, I care for the planet, but I don't like the mess of politics, and I don't like I don't know, it's just not enjoyable for me. And but I was like, I had this weird sacrificial thing of like, I had this false idea that the best way that I could be an activist, the more unhappy and the more I sacrifice, the more unhappy I am. And that means I'm just a martyr for the cause, and I'm doing the best that I can. And it's like this whole idea that we have to martyr ourselves for the cause, or we somehow have to like sacrifice our happiness and what we love for the climate, is so counterintuitive, because then you just get burnt out, you resent the cause, and then you end up not fighting for it. So I was under the impression that it's like, I would literally say to someone, yeah, I'm going to be so unhappy, but like, it's fine because I'm going to be a great politician. I'm going to pass all these great laws. And then I was like, why do I have, like, there are so many people who would love that work, who could do. And look, I'm not closing the future to anything. I'm not closing the door to anything in the future. Maybe like way in the future, after I've, you know, done some stuff, like if there's a need for me to run, or if there's like, I don't know, like I'm not closing the door to anything, but I'm saying that I've never enjoyed a political science class. Hardly. And the classes that I really enjoyed were my art classes, but I was like, oh, that can never be my career. The thing that I love can never be my career. And then I was like, well, why can't it be? Life is short, you know, and a part of, you know, dealing with climate anxiety is understanding that we don't know what's going to happen, so we might as well do what makes us happy while we're here. And I've always loved movies and TV shows to a higher extent than a lot of my friends, because they were just like, oh yeah, let's watch TV. But I would like cling to shows and movies, and like, there's my outlet, my escape, my everything. Like, I'm very attached, and my favorite thing to talk about is my favorite shows and movies. And so I always loved, when I was little, I was like, wasn't a theater kid, but I always loved to act. I loved the stage. I loved telling stories. When I was little, I was always telling stories. Like, I couldn't even read yet, but I was still like telling stories. And there are videotapes of me like just declaring things to my parents. And like, I've always been a storyteller since like there are videos of me when I was 3, like being a storyteller. So I was like, I had this realization that I should do what I love. But then what really pushed me into film, something else, I think that I've also been, and part of this is my doing, because that's what I project in public, but part of, I've just been kind of reduced to just one aspect of my life. Like, I am a full person who happens to care about the climate change, and then Jamie, the climate person, is all that anyone sees. But in reality, I care about a lot of other things. And another thing that I really, really care about is LGBT representation in the media, specifically for queer women. And I remember like going to the movies, watching Disney princess movies that I loved, doing all this stuff, like seeing all these shows and movies, and never seeing girls like me, girls who like girls in the media, in movies, being the star of our own stories. And it just really hurt because that made me feel erased and like I didn't belong. And representation matters and it can save lives. And so that's something that I really, really care about. And so, you know, I wasn't really a part of anything, but I was more like, there were different campaigns on Twitter of like trying to get different directors to put in LGBT characters into things, like the whole Give Elsa a Girlfriend thing for Frozen 2 and everything like that. And I was like, why am I begging heterosexual directors to please throw me a bone? Why can't I be the director? Why can't I be the writer who makes the stories that little girls like me when I was in the closet would have like been amazing and would have helped me through so much internalized, like I have so much internalized homophobia, so much awful things that I went through. And I was like, I want to be the director and the screenwriter and the storyteller that helps people and tells the stories and also like normalizes girls who love girls in society in a non-fetishizing, non-male gazy way. Like our stories told by us genuinely, enough with the stereotypes, enough with the weird male fetishization. So I switched my major on the Common App and I decided I'm going to go to film. And I really love storytelling. I really care about representation. I have so many stories to tell. I have so many ideas. So I switched my major and I said, I'm going to study film and television. And then I got into NYU and I'm here.
Great. Well, congratulations on that. It's a new city to be involved in and to start college. I think it's a really good place to be, to kind of step back and to study and to listen and to learn and to kind of like you say, it's not just because this is what you've been doing and who you've been sort of known as within sort of climate leadership. Like you say, there's so many other elements to yourself and interests that you're interested in. And, you know, it's the same with me when I shifted and didn't go to study acting, but I went to study directing and writing. And that decision was so, for me, you know, I felt like real ownership over that decision because it was like led purely through like my interests and my joy that I had in that. And it was really important for me to go and do that separately. And I think, you know, like you say, it's like really important or inspiring that you felt erased, unseen, and rather than kind of convincing people to tell your story correctly or that, it's like you become the storyteller. I think that happens so much. You know, for me, there are stories that I wish that were being told and you're like, oh, I can tell them. Like I can step up to that kind of gap that there is to go and tell a story that I feel like I can communicate or I can sort of expose, shed light on. And I think the beauty of film and why I'm so in love with filmmaking is that it's kind of an output, a medium through which you can like help to just personally understand the world. So that's what I kind of do it for. You know, I'm always led to stories that I'm like, why do I keep being pulled to that story? I'm going to go and kind of explore it and see if I can process why I'm drawn to that issue. I would love to, I mean, you mentioned your book a little bit at the beginning, but I would love to just re-mention that so people remember the title and also can be inspired to essentially maybe go look that up, or possibly also are there ways that we can be more involved with This Is Zero Hour, or are there ways that we can inspire some people to sort of like do some actions beyond listening?
Yeah, so for everyone in the United States, the 2020 election is coming up, and you should all vote.
Yeah, vote.
So you can go to vote4 with the number 4, vote4ourfuture.org to check your status and get registered, and then get involved with different voting events that we're having coming up, digital, of course, because of COVID. So that's really how you can get involved. If you want to stay in touch with me, you can follow me at Jamie_S_Margolin, and just hit me up on Instagram, send me a message. And then if you would like to read the book about how to get more involved, how to become an organizer or just take action on a cause, this is what the book looks like in the United States, though there are different international editions. And you can go to www.youth2powerbook.com or just ask for Youth to Power at your local bookstore or on Audible. I recorded an audiobook, so if you like listening to audiobooks, you can also put in Youth to Power in your favorite audiobook listening website.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'll when I post the video, I'll make sure to add those things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for talking. And is there anything else you'd love to add or different things?
I mean, I guess the only thing I'd add is like really the best you can do in terms of climate anxiety is just take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and try to find a little bit of joy and meaning in each day. I know that that can be difficult. For me, I struggle chronically with like depression and anxiety. So that's an added layer. And so if you struggle with these things, just know that you're not alone. And just take it one day at a time, because that's really all that we can do. And I know this is cheesy for me to be quoting Frozen 2, but there's a song that's called The Next Right Thing, and like all you can just do when the world is dark is just to do the next right thing, the next right thing. Even if you can't see far ahead, just do the next right thing. And so that's really, I guess, the motto that I live by is just, you know, sometimes it's all overwhelming, not just with the climate crisis, but with all of the other issues that we're facing. Just take a deep breath, do the next right thing, do the best you can with what you have.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. And thanks for sharing your thoughts and experience in life. And I will post this on here so everyone can watch who wasn't able to tune in. And thanks to everyone who's watching.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone.
You too. Bye, Jamie.
Bye.